All right, everybody, we are back this week for UFC 317, Oliveira versus Topuria, or Topuria versus Oliveira in the UFC's Mecca in Las Vegas, Nevada for International Fight Week, the single most important event in a mixed martial arts for the year. Obviously, in the main event, you have Ilia Topuria going up to 155 pounds and originally was going to challenge Islam Makhachev, now going in and challenging Charles Do Bronx Oliveira for the vacant title after Oliveira's coming off that 5-round decision victory over Michael Chandler, while Ilia Topuria is coming off back-to-back knockouts of two of the greatest featherweights in the UFC and in mixed martial arts history, in Alexander Volkanovski and Max Blessed Holloway. This will be the second time in the UFC that Topuria has fought at 155 pounds. Prior to this, it was a battle against Jai Herbert, where he suffered some early adversity and came back with a brutal knockout victory, and then obviously would continue his career at 145 pounds. In the co-main event of the evening, you have the reigning defending best flyweight in the world in Alexandre the Cannibal Pantoja defending his championship against a man he already holds one victory over in Kai Don't Blink Kara France, which took place on The Ultimate Fighter, so it doesn't necessarily count on their record. But two great title fights, a great card in between. Let's get this started and step into the ring. Alright guys, and like we do on most of these cards, you already know the drill. We're not going to cover every single fight, but for this card we've covered, I believe, 9 or 10. And we're going to kick it off in the welterweight division with a battle between Nico the Hybrid Price and Jacoby Smith. I think we know what to expect here, but at the same time, you kind of can't put all your eggs in one basket with a fighter coming off the Contender Series. Jacoby Smith looked great in that Contender Series fight. He comes in, he makes his UFC debut against Preston Parsons and lands a brutal left hook that sleeps him. And Parsons is a guy who, you know, got knocked out by Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez early in his UFC career. I believe that was one of D-Rod's first wins. But aside from that, he's a pretty durable guy, and he was on a little bit of a momentum-building streak at that point in time. Like, he was looking good in most of his fights. Nico Price, a guy who always has fun fights, is kill or be killed, can be knocked out, can be submitted, but will come forward and look for the KO, will look for the submissions. A very unorthodox fighter. He has some knockouts off of his back, knockouts with up kicks like against the likes of James Vick, knockout with hammer fists when he was on his back against the likes of Randy Rude Boy Brown. So this guy can get KOs from just about anywhere. And he is what we like to say a UFC veteran at this point. I mean, fought some of the best. But against Jacoby Smith, I think it's just going to be a power dynamic that's going to be way too much for a guy like Nico Price to handle. I think the power of Smith in his hands, his crisp boxing combinations, you know, people are going to look at that knockout win over Preston Parsons and they're going to be like, well, he got the KO, but Nico's been in there with yada, 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 whatever. This guy's going to look to brawl. If he looks to brawl with Nico Price, it's a bad idea. But from what I've seen from Smith so far, he looks like a pretty calculated fighter. He looks like a guy who will look for takedowns, look to execute the wrestling. I mean, on the Contender, he had that body lock, was able to jump and get like a crackdown on the calf and then direct him back to the ground and just beat him up with ground and pound. I think anywhere this fight takes place, I think Jacoby Smith is not only the better athlete, not only more explosive, but technical, or more technical and cleaner than a guy like Nico Price, who prides himself on getting into brawls and wars, but gets hit in like every one of his fights. He's always getting rocked, he's always getting hurt, he's always getting wobbled. So aside from like a meme style KO, I gotta go with Jacoby Smith here, because I think, yeah, he's a minus 2,000 favorite, you know, whatever you want to say, but at the same time, this guy is going to look like a huge favorite. This guy is going to get in the face of Nico Price, and he's going to put him out. Now, here's the thing. We see all these guys look real good on the Contender. They come to the UFC. Sometimes they don't live up to the potential. And more often than not, they're not living up to the potential. A lot of the times, these fighters are, you know, expected 85, 90% of the time to get a finish, and they go the distance. I don't think Jacoby Smith is going to go the distance in this fight, but lately MMA has not been making sense. Fights that should finish are going the distance. Fights that should go the distance are finishing. It's kind of like a role reversal for mixed martial arts at this current point in 2025, but I think this is where, everything remains how it's supposed to be. I'm going to say Jacoby Smith comes in, hurts Nico Price early, drops him, and finishes him off in round 1. I'm going to go with Jacoby Smith, round 1 knockout over Nico Price. There is potential for Price to make it into round 2. If we make it into round 3, I would say that's probably because Smith is getting tired and maybe Nico Price could pull it out in the 3rd round, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that's wishful thinking, and I'm going to say Jacoby Smith just cracks him with a big shot in round 1, puts him down, and gets the knockout. So give me Jacoby Smith to get the job done. Round 1 KO against Nico Price. Next fight up is in the lightweight division. You got a battle between Terrence T-Rex McKinney taking on Vyacheslav Slavaklaus Borshchev. This is a battle between two of the most inconsistent fighters in mixed martial arts, and that makes this fight very difficult to break down. I think on the feet, Vyacheslav Borshchev is the way more technical striker. But I do think Terrence McKinney, he comes out in round 1, he always looks like a very solid fighter. I mean, you're talking about a guy who almost finished Drew Dober in the first round of their fight a while back. Hurt him with a knee, dropped him with a head kick. I mean, he was on his way to finishing him. He got tired. Drew Dober came back and finished him off later in the same round. Borshchev's a guy who went the distance with Nazim Sadykhov, who just came off a knockout victory in round 2 against Nicholas Mota in what could be considered to be one of the fights of the year. And the only reason that fight went to a draw is because Nazim dropped him and hurt him so bad in round 2 that he got a 10-8. But he lost the first round and he lost the 3rd round 10-9 because of the forward pressure, because of the boxing, the footwork, the head movement, the rolling, and the inside fighting of a guy like Borshchev. I really do think that in this fight, Borshchev could piece up Terrence McKinney on the feet. It would not surprise me if he knocked him out in round 1. It wouldn't surprise me if Terrence McKinney came in, hurt Borshchev, took him to the ground, looked for a submission, looked for ground and pound, but Borshchev was able to survive, come back, and finish off McKinney later in the fight. This is a fight that, honestly, to me is 50-50 because, like I said, both of these guys are very inconsistent. Both of these guys lose fights that they should win, and they win fights that people don't expect them to. There is a big grappling disadvantage on the side of Borshchev, and I think if Terrence is smart, he's going to look to wrestle. He's going to look to wrestle early, probably look to duck under and take the back, lock in the body triangle, use his long, lengthy frame, and just try to pepper him, beat him up, and hit him with some ground and pound and potentially look to lock up a submission. But we're also talking about a guy who survived for a very long time on the ground against Chase Hooper, but at the same time, I think people might take that with a grain. You got to take that with a grain of salt because he might have survived, but the ref should have stopped it. That fight should have been declared a TKO for Chase Hooper. He was able to survive until he got submitted. You look at the fight against Mike Beast Boy Davis, he just had that big hole in the grappling, got taken down, got out wrestled, got controlled, almost got submitted, almost got ground and pounded, but made it to a decision, ended up losing the decision. But I don't really want to make a pick because I think both these guys can win early. I think if the fight goes into the 2nd round, it goes towards the slide of the underdog in Borshchev because I think he has more gas in the tank and more cardio to push, whereas I think Terrence McKinney is more of like a 5, 6, 7-minute fighter. Once you get to the midpoint of the 2nd round, he's going to fall off a cliff, and he's probably going to get TKO'd on the feet because we've seen that although he's really dangerous on the feet, the guy does not have good defensive responsibility. He gets hit with a lot of shots. When he gets tired, he leaves his head on the center line. He gets clipped, he gets hurt, he gets rocked, and he can be put away, and I think Borshchev has that boxing style and that bob and weave style to where he can put him away if he can just survive the onslaught of the 1st round. I don't want to make a pick, but I'm going to go with Borshchev, okay? I'm going to go with Slavaklaus. I think he's going to knock McKinney out. I think he will get taken down. I think he will get beaten up. But I don't think he gets submitted. I don't think he gets finished in round 1. And I think when we get into round 2, I'm going to say that McKinney starts to tire out. It makes it easier for Borshchev to stop the takedowns. And he starts using that inside fighting. He starts using his combinations. He rips that left hook to the body, rips those uppercuts, rips those overhands. And I think he hurts McKinney towards the midpoint of round 2, puts him down, and finishes him off. So I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to go with a guy who I don't think is really a popular pick this week. I'm going to go with Slavaklaus. Give me Vyacheslav Slava caused Borshchev to weather the storm, come back in round 2, hurt McKinney to the body, and work back up top and get him out of there. Give me Vyacheslav, Slava Claus Borshchev, round 2 TKO over Terrence T-Rex McKinney. All right, next fight up is in the women's flyweight division. You have Viviane Araujo taking on Tracy Cortez. I see a lot of people on Tracy Cortez this week, and realistically, it's women's MMA. And, if you see a big underdog, I think most of the time you should take it. But from a stylistic perspective, I don't really think Tracy Cortez is that good. I don't think Viviane is that good either, but you have to look at the fact that Cortez does have a win over Jasmine Jasdavicius. And, seeing what she's been doing recently, I think that is very, very impressive. Araujo was able to survive, make it to a decision against Natalia Silva. Silva is a very solid fighter in her own right. She does go to decision a lot. She just beat Alexa Grasso, and that was a fight where we did pick Natalia Silva. We thought Natalia Silva was going to win against Vivi, but we did take her by finish, and she wasn't able to get the finish, but she did rock and hurt her a bunch of times. I just think this fight's going to play out competitive, man. Really what it comes down to is I think that the line is off, but from a stylistic perspective, I think the better boxer is Tracy Cortez. I feel like she uses her jab good. She uses a 1-2. She circles well. She has decent kicks. I would say the stronger fighter in the clinch is going to be Viviane Araujo. I think she's stronger. I think she probably fights off a lot of the wrestling and takedowns of Cortez, which makes Cortez tired and which makes this fight more competitive. The longer this fight goes, I would say it probably plays into the side of the veteran, at least in terms of the UFC experience with Viviane Araujo. She's good on the feet. She's a well-rounded fighter. She has good takedown defense. She has good ability to get up. I think she's just very well-rounded, and I think it makes it a tough fight for a girl like Tracy Cortez to, not that she can't win, because I definitely think she could, but I think it's going to make it hard for her to get a clear win. I think either way that this fight plays out, more times than not, it's going to be a close fight. It's probably going to go to a split decision more times than it doesn't, just because of the way these girls fight. Cortez has decent boxing. She pushes the pace, pushes the pressure, but I don't think she's going to have an easy time taking down Araujo. I don't think she's going to have an easy time controlling Araujo on the ground, and I think Araujo can get takedowns of her own. I think she can push her against the fence and win some time on the clock, suck the clock down, land some knees, land some elbows, and I think, like I said, on the feet, I think it's going to be competitive. I would honestly say that I think Araujo has more power and pop in her strikes, and the volume might just be on the side of Cortez. Either way, I think this is a close fight. I'm going to go with Araujo. I think Araujo wins 29-28 split decision. I think it's going to be close, but I just think Araujo does enough. Maybe she wins by controlling Cortez on the fence, winning the later rounds. I think she might be able to push a higher cardio pace in the third round than a Cortez. And I just think that, I don't think Araujo should be a big underdog, but I do think that this fight's going to be close enough in the moments where Araujo looks good. I think she can win this fight. So give me Viviane Araujo, 29-28 split decision over Tracy Cortez. I'm gonna pick her here. I think she can win this fight. All right, next fight up is in the featherweight division. You got a battle between Amil, Hurricane Amil, taking on Jose Delgado. I'm going to be honest with you guys, straight up, I got Jose Delgado winning this fight, and I think he knocks out Amil. Now, I haven't picked against Hyder. I have not picked against Hyder. I picked him as a big underdog. I picked him by knockout against Jung-Young Lee, the Korean Tiger. I picked him as an underdog again against William Gomes. And I picked him for a lot of reasons. The forward pressure, the boxing combinations, the ability to throw himself into the fire, just continually move him forward. Solid ground and pound, always looking for a finish, always looking to put the pace and pressure on you. However, I think this is where he runs into a brick wall, known as Jose Delgado. Now, you have 9-1 going up against 11-0. You're going to say, well, he's undefeated. Go back and watch the Jung-Young Lee fight. Before he got that knockout, he got rocked. There was a point where he walked in, got hit, and got rocked, and then just continued to bite down on the mouthpiece, push forward, left and right hooks, big uppercuts, push against the fence, make it nasty, make it dirty, kind of throw technique out the window and just go to war. I think if you go to war against Delgado, now with a guy like Delgado who constantly switches stances, he trains out of the MMA lab, Randy Steinke, Marcus McGee trains out there, a lot of other fighters as well, Jared the Killer Gorilla Cannonier. He's constantly moving laterally. He's switching his stances. He throws combinations mid-stance switch. That knee he landed on the Contender Series was nasty. Throws big knees up the middle, can catch you on the chin. Good straight punches, good overhands, good hooks, good knees to the body. But I like his footwork and his movement against a guy like Hyder Amil, who's pretty much just going to be coming forward the entire time. Sorry, guys, I'm super congested for a second. But I think that the footwork and the movement and the angles and the combinations, I think that runs Hyder Amil into a lot of trouble in this fight. I think he will walk forward, he will look to cut the cage off, and I think he's going to be running into counters. I think the volume is probably going to be on the side of Hyder Amil. You know, he's going to come forward, look to land big shots, look to tire out Delgado, drag him into the deep waters, and drown him. I think the wrestling, a lot of people are going to think that Amil's going to be able to just change levels, take down Delgado, get him on the ground, beat him up with ground and pound, and look to set up a submission. I think Delgado has better grappling than you're going to think. And I mean, even on the Contender Series, the guy he was fighting, he was a solid wrestler, a solid grappler, and he got a takedown pretty easy. And then against Connor Matthews, he hurt him on the feet, but he technically finished him on the ground, you know? So I think this is going to be a good fight. I think this is going to be a war. I think the forward pressure will get to Delgado at certain points, but I think the stance changes, the cutting of the angles, the lateral movement, I think it's going to allow for him to land really good counters against Hyder Amil. And I think eventually Delgado is going to put Amil down and finish him via knockout. That's going to be my pick. I think Delgado cuts the angles, moves laterally, moves in and out, and just eventually lands a big left hand or a big overhand off the stance switch. Hurts Hyder Amil, drops him, jumps on him, and finishes him off. So I'm going to go with Jose Delgado, round 2 KO against Hyder Amil. I think he's going to knock him out. I think just that forward pressure, the reckless abandon, I think he's going to run into something. I think Delgado's going to chop the leg kicks. He's going to use the jab. He's going to set him up, cut those angles, and boom, just crack him on the way in. A big hand or left hand over the top or a right straight. Drop him, jump on him, and finish him off. Give me Jose Delgado, round 2 TKO over Hurricane Hyder Amil. All right, next up is a battle in the middleweight division. You have a fight between Jack the Joker Hermansson taking on Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues. Hermansson coming into this fight off that decision victory over Joe Pyfer on a UFC fight night, where he was a pretty big underdog. He came through, won 3 rounds to 2, won the decision, dropped the first 2 rounds, won the last 3. Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues coming off a fight where he should have knocked out Jared Cannonier, was beating him up, was rocking him all over the place, was hurting him, gassed himself out, and then eventually just got beat up and finished with the veteran experience of Cannonier. But Rodrigues is kind of a UFC veteran at this point as well. Definitely a mixed martial arts veteran. I'm going to be real with you guys. I do worry a little bit about the durability of Rodrigues. You know, off that knockout loss. Before that, he won a couple fights, but he did get knocked out by Bruno Ferreira. However, I just don't think Hermansson has the power to get a knockout. And you know, Gregory Rodrigues is usually he's known as a striker, at least in the UFC. When you watch his fights, he's walking forward, big left hooks, big right hands, good shots to the body, likes to get on the inside, likes to make it dirty, heavy on the pressure, heavy on the front foot, looking to pop the jab, pop the 1-2, get you on that back foot and just beat you up and bully you. He's known as a bully. Hermansson's a guy who's not easy to bully, but I think Gregory Rodrigues has the style to where he can do that. I don't really think the wrestling and the takedowns are going to be there against a guy like Rodrigues unless he gets him to the 3rd round. I would say in most cases, if this fight gets to the 3rd round, Jack Hermansson probably is going to win that 3rd round because I think Rodrigues will gas out, he'll get tired, he'll slow down, and it'll allow for Hermansson to start to land some strikes of his own, use that herky-jerky footwork, pop the jab, pop the 1-2, land the check hook, and then use his wrestling to probably get takedowns in that 3rd round. But I think the first 2 rounds are going to be so hard for him to do that. But I do worry, like I said, about the chin of Rodrigues. Like, you know, I don't think Hermansson hits that hard, but who's to say Rodrigues doesn't throw himself into the fire and just get clipped with a big shot and knocked out? Kind of like Dustin Stoltzfus against Marc-Andre Barrios. Not known as a knockout artist, not known as a heavy striker, but he knocked him out, and that was the last thing anybody would have expected. A lot of people would have expected if Stoltzfus was going to get a finish, it was either going to be a ground and pound TKO or more than likely a submission like he got against Punahele Soriano. But in this fight, man, I just don't think Hermansson is going to be able to weather the storm. He's had a long layoff. We haven't seen him in a long time. Some guys come back and look great on the layoff. I just think this is a bad matchup for him, considering the fact that even with Rodrigues pushing forward, even with Rodrigues having that forward pressure, that heavy boxing style, heavy power, and the concussive blows to hurt, pressure, and potentially knock out Hermansson, he also has a good grappling game and good jiu-jitsu to where he can probably stop the takedowns of Hermansson or work his way back up to the feet if he does get taken down, and use a butterfly guard, use a sweep, use the underhook to get back up to the feet, and more than likely defend the submissions. And I don't think Hermansson's going to control him on the floor. But like I said, he does wing himself and throw himself into the fire, so you do have to worry about the fact that he could walk in and get clipped with a shot, like we said, just like Stoltzfus and Barriault. But I'm going to take Rodrigues. I think the pressure and the boxing and the power in his shots is going to be too much for Jack Hermansson. He's not a guy who gets knocked out, but I think he could get hurt and potentially TKO'd here against Rodrigues, who has that forward pressure style. So give me Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues to bounce back, get a win here. I'm going to say he wins second round TKO over Jack the Joker Hermansson. I think the pressure just gets to Jack before he can get to that wrestling, and I think RoboCop puts some serious damage on him and hurts him, and the ref stops the fight. So give me Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues round 2 TKO in this fight. All right, next up is a battle in the flyweight division. You have a fight between Brandon Raw Dog Royval and the man who just competed at UFC 317 or 316 in the fearless Joshua Van. 14-2 for Van, 17-7 for Brandon Raw Dog Royval, but Royval is coming off of that victory over Tatsuro Taira, who was thought to run through Brandon Royval in that fight, at least going into it. Royval was a big underdog in that one. I see a lot of people on Royval, and it does make sense, to a degree. I think Royval has the much better jiu-jitsu. I think Royval, if the fight gets to the ground, he's going to have an advantage, and he could win with ground and pound. He could just win on controlled time. He could lock up a submission on Joshua Van. However, I'm going to take Joshua Van in this fight, and I just think there's some holes in the game of the striking of Royval that leave him open for a style like Joshua Van. More often than not, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the jab of Royval. You've seen lately that Royval is very big on that jab. He's very big on a 1-2. He moves laterally, moves in and out, check hook, straight left hand, moving around, switching his stances, and constantly putting that jab in his opponent's face. Constantly putting that jab. You feed that jab to Joshua Van, he's going to start to make reads on it. He's going to start to time it, and he's going to start to throw shots, especially to the body. And I think that's really what pays dividends for him in this fight, is the body work of Joshua Van. We saw it against Bruno Silva. We've seen it in the fight against Felipe Bunes. We've seen it in a lot of his fights. We saw it against Cody Durden, again, in a fight where he should have got the finish, but it didn't happen. I could easily see him getting a late second or a mid-third round TKO against Brandon Royval here. When you're a boxer, you are very, very heavy on reading and timing the opponent's jab. And with Royval, he can have some counters to kind of block off and counter the counters of Joshua Van. But the number one counter for a boxer against a jab is either coming over the top with the right hand or slipping to the inside and ripping that big shot to the body. And I really think the body work is what Joshua Van's going to use in this fight to kind of pepper up Brandon Royval. I think Royval's going to land some big shots. I could see Royval knocking out Joshua Van. I could see Joshua Van knocking out Royval. I think the wrestling is primarily going to take a back seat here, and I think we're going to get a 15-minute kickboxing match. And I think in a 15-minute kickboxing match, Royval does have the opportunity to hurt Joshua Van. Those knees up the middle, the uppercuts, spinning back elbows. I think those wild, crazy strikes are what you have to throw against a primary boxer in Joshua Van. You got to chop the lead leg. You got to beat up the calf. You got to kind of pepper him with the jab, but not throw it too much because he'll start to make reads. And you got to throw strikes up the middle, those uppercuts, those upward elbows, knees up the middle. I think Royval could potentially land a knee like he did against Mateus Nicolau and knock out Joshua Van. If Royval gets a KO here, I think that's how it happens, is probably a knee up the middle that catches Joshua Van on the chin and knocks him out. And a lot of people are going to talk about the experience, Brandon Royval, experience. I'm starting to think that that experience, it matters in some fights and it doesn't in others. And I think you should talk about it when you're breaking down fights. It should take part in your analysis, but I don't think it means as much as it used to mean. I just think MMA is at a different level now where some guys are coming up, and even though they don't have that experience, they're able to fight through it. And it's a case-by-case basis, but I think Joshua Van can fight through against Royval and win this fight, man. I like his boxing. I think he's going to time the jab and time the entries and start ripping body shots, right hook, left hook to the body, liver shot, cross to the body, left liver shot. He's going to have to look out for, like I said, the straights to the body, unless you get your head off the center line, because you don't want to get caught with strikes up the center channel from Royval when he really likes to throw those off the lead or the rear side, those knees up the middle, the check hooks, etc., etc. But, I think Royval has a chance to win this fight. I think he can cause a lot of damage to Van, but I think the volume and output of Van, if this was a 5-rounder, I think Royval has a better chance. But in a 3-rounder, I think the volume and the body shots of Joshua Van are really just going to eat up Brandon Royval. I think he's going to be able to work up to the top as well. And, a lot of people are talking about, the durability on Joshua Van's side is a question mark. The durability on the Royval side, he's a very durable fighter. This guy's gotten rocked and wobbled and stunned in a lot of fights, and just most people weren't able to finish him. I think if Van hurts Royval, he will start ripping to the body and ripping up top, and I think for sure he could finish him late. I'm going to say, I'm going to go with it, actually. Give me a 3rd-round TKO for Joshua Van against Brandon Royval. I just think he's going to work that body. He's going to slip to the inside. He's going to throw hooks. He's going to throw, straights. And, people are going to say, experience like we already talked about. But, go back and watch the Matt Schnell and Brandon Royval fight. And Schnell was kind of boxing the face off Brandon Royval. And I think he's made adjustments. I think he's a better version of himself now. But I think Van will beat this guy up, the longer that this fight goes. And yes, Royval's always live to get a sub, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of takedowns on the side of Royval. And I know Van's going to have good takedown defense and try to keep it on the feet. And I'm going to say Van wins 29-28, unanimous decision. But I would not be surprised at all if he found a late finish in that 3rd round or late in the 2nd round, just getting his timing the jab, catching the shots, and starting to land good counters and ripping to the body of Royval. I think those body shots are really going to pay dividends here for a guy like Joshua Van. So I'm taking Van. I like him here. I got him as an underdog. He's in one of my bets, and we'll talk about that later. Maybe I'll mention my bet at the end of the show. But I'm going to take Van, round 3 body shot TKO over Brandon Raw Dog Royval, but easily could go to a decision. I'm a little bit out of order here. I don't know how this happened, but I guess I didn't have this fight lined up in the queue. And I don't know how, like I said, because I'm very excited for this fight. It's a battle in the bantamweight division. It is going to be the main card opener between Peyton Talbott and Felipe Lima. Guys, this is a great fight. This is 2 up-and-coming prospects. This is a guy in Lima who's 2-0 in the UFC, comes in on his debut and finishes Muhammad Naimov in the 3rd round via rear naked choke. I think the submission for Lima in that fight for round 2 and round 3 was like plus 3,700. Something crazy. And Peyton Talbott coming off of a decision loss to Raoni Barcelos. But, Barcelos is coming off a pretty dominant win over Cody No Love Garbrandt in his last fight, where he probably could have got a finish late, but ended up winning a decision. And Barcelos is on a little bit of like a career resurgence at this point. So I don't think you can take a ton away from Peyton Talbott in losing that fight. However, his biggest win in his UFC career was going up against Cameron Simon. And to be honest, I'm not really impressed with Simon. I think he's good, but I don't think he's UFC level, and I think we've started to see that more and more. He lost to Christian Rodrigues, who's a UFC veteran, very solid fighter. Can't take away, no shame in that, losing a decision. And then he goes in, he loses to Talbot, which I believe was right after the Rodrigues fight. And then after that, he goes in and he loses to Malcolm Wellmaker by knockout in the 1st round. We don't know much about Wellmaker yet, but from what we've seen, this guy is a very solid fighter. I think Felipe Lima has all the goods. And I think in a striking matchup, Felipe Lima can be competitive. but I do think Peyton Talbott would have the better striking. He's got better pull counters. He uses his range. He uses his reach better. He's got a good jab, a good 1-2. He throws good kicks, especially up the middle, front kicks to the body, head kicks. He moves around well, but the majority of his success in the striking comes from his boxing more than his kicking. He does throw kicks, like I said. He can throw low kicks, throw front kicks, mixes it up very well. Good head movement, slipping off the center, coming through with counters. But I see a glaring hole in his wrestling and takedown defense, and a lot of people are only going to point to the fight against Raoni Barcelos. But if you go back and you watch his win over Nick Aguirre, yeah, he won that fight by submission. He took his back, got the round 3 rear naked choke. That was a big win. Huge win, actually, because Aguirre's a very solid grappler. But he got taken down. He got his back taken. He got dominated on the ground in that first round. Dominated, controlled, got his back taken, was able to fight off any submissions. But that was a guy against a guy in Aguirre who, yes, has a lot of MMA experience, but, I don't think he's on the level in terms of mixed martial arts of a Felipe Lima. Lima is a very solid grappler, very good takedowns, very good ability to take your back. He's very good at getting to the body lock, shucking you forward, and then as he shucks you forward, he slides that close side hook in, the lead side hook, and then drags that other hook in, puts the body lock, can flatten you out, land ground and pound. And I think if Felipe Lima gets Peyton Talbott in the same position that Raoni Barcelos did, where he had him flattened out on the ground, I think Lima finishes that fight, either with a rear naked choke or with ground and pound. You don't want to be in that position, and I think a guy like Lima is going to hunt for a finish. Barcelos is not technically a finish hunter. A lot of the times when Barcelos wins, he's winning by decision, and I think if Lima gets Talbott to the ground, gets to the back, flattens him out, lands some ground and pound and peppers him up, he's going to look to hunt that neck. He's going to look to land ground and pound and go back to the neck and look to finish you off with a submission or finish you with ground and pound. On the feet, I think he's good. He trains with Andreas Michaels, I think that's his name. Andreas Michael? Yeah, with All-Stars, with Hamzat Chimaev, I believe Bernardo Sopai, Alexander Gustafsson, etc., etc. But I like what he has on the feet. He has good jabs, good front kicks, good 1-2s. He moves around well. But I don't think he's going to want to play around for too long with Talbott on the feet. But Talbott also coming off a loss, we're going to see one of two things. Either he's going to come in motivated and look to get a finish, or he's going to come in tentative and gun shy because he's probably going to expect for Talbott or for Lima to look to wrestle and get to the takedowns and get to the body locks and the pressure. So, like I said, I think Talbott has an advantage on the feet. There's always that potential that he knocks out Felipe Lima, but I like Lima's overall game. I think he's the more well-rounded fighter, and I think he will exploit the holes in the grappling for Peyton Talbott, take him down, beat him up, soften him up, pepper him up, and eventually get a submission finish. I'm going to go with Felipe Lima to win round 2 rear naked choke submission over Peyton Talbott. This is a bad fight for Peyton Talbott. He's always live for a KO. He's got crisp, clean striking, but I think Felipe can compete on the feet and do it long enough to where it opens up the grappling and wrestling and the jiu-jitsu, and that's where he's going to have a huge advantage over Talbott because we've seen holes in multiple fights, not just one. So give me Felipe Lima to get that grappling going, get to the back, flatten him out, beat him up, and eventually lock up that submission. Felipe Lima, round 2, rear naked choke against Peyton Talbott. All right, up next, you got a battle between Beneil Dariush taking on Renato Moicano. This was actually supposed to take place on the same card when Moicano stepped in on short notice to fill in for Arman Tsarukyan against Islam Makhachev. And then, obviously, Moicano got submitted in the first round. I think this is a good fight. I think this is a close fight, but I'm going to go with Beneil Dariush. I think he wins. I just think he's better everywhere than Renato Moicano, and I think he's got good scrambles, good grappling, good submission defense, good wrestling offense. On the feet, I think he's the better striker. I think he has the better kicks to the body, the better kicks to the inside leg, the better kicks to the head. And, Moicano's very good at landing calf kicks and chopping the calf kicks, but against a southpaw, that's really not going to be there much. Those calf kicks aren't going to be there. It's going to have to be inside leg kicks or kicks to the body or kicks to the head, and I don't really see Moicano having much success with that. I think Moicano can clip Dariush and hurt him because we've seen so many times before, Dariush get rocked, Dariush get sat down, Dariush get knocked out. We've seen Dariush get rocked and come back, like in the fight against Drakkar Klose. But I just think, as an overall fighter, Beneil Dariush is the better fighter in this fight. I think Moicano will do better if he's on top. If he's got the back of Dariush, I think that's going to be an issue. But I think it's going to be hard for Moicano to really exploit the holes in the grappling of Dariush because he doesn't have many. This guy doesn't really get out-grappled. He doesn't get out-wrestled. He went scramble for scramble with Mateusz Gamrot. And, we saw what Gamrot just did to Ludovic Klein. We've seen what Gamrot has done to multiple guys in this division. He also dropped Gamrot with a big overhand left. I think he could crack Moicano and knock him out. I think he could drop Moicano and potentially submit him. I would think more of a knockout on the side of Dariush than a submission. And on the side of Moicano, I think a knockout's live as well because Dariush is not that durable. The durability at least has declined in recent performances. He's been knocked out, he's been dropped, he's been rocked, he's been wobbled. Moicano could hurt him and potentially put him down. If he rocks him, he might not be able to recover. Dariush is a guy where, he recovered in the Drakkar Klose fight, but we've seen, usually if this guy gets hurt, he doesn't have that ability to really recover, and then seems to be the end. Moicano's been dropped, come back, and finished the opponent later on the ground, but he's not really going to have the opportunity to get those finishes because Dariush has such good grappling both defensively and offensively, whether it comes to the wrestling or the jiu-jitsu. I also think you have to break down the grappling in different aspects, right? Like we talk about on this podcast all the time. There's wrestling, there's judo, there's jiu-jitsu. There's a difference between wrestling and jiu-jitsu on the ground. I think Moicano has the better jiu-jitsu, but I think Dariush has the better wrestling scrambles, and the better wrestling defense. And I think he has more power on the feet, and he's the more technical striker on the feet. I think he can hurt Moicano to the body with the rear kick. But again, Dariush, we don't know if he's all in. Who knows how motivated he is. And Moicano, at the same time, though, coming off that loss to Islam Makhachev, we know he got a lot of money. We know he got paid a lot. We know Moicano is living good, especially with his podcast on Home of Fight with Maddie Betts and Hey Jive. And Gilbert Burns. Maddie Betts, Gilbert Burns, and Renato Moicano on the Show Me the Money podcast. He's got the money to where he's living comfortably too. So how motivated is he going to be to get this win? I'm going to take Dariush because I think he's the better fighter overall. I think he's better on the feet. I think he has more power. And I think he has the wrestling to stop Moicano's jiu-jitsu. I'm going to take Dariush by knockout. I think he wins, I'm going to say round 2 KO. I think he catches him with a big left hand, hurts him and puts him down and finishes him off. He could get a sub, but I don't think this fight goes the distance. But I'm going to take Dariush round 2 knockout over Renato Moicano. I think he cracks him coming in, drops him, jumps on him, and finishes him off. All right, now we're at the co-main event of the evening for the Flyweight Championship of the world in a battle between the champion and Alexandre, the Cannibal Pantoja, taking on the challenger in Kai Don't Blink Kara France. When it comes to this fight, I think a lot of people are just going to blindly pick Pantoja, and I really wouldn't be mad at you for that. I wouldn't at all. Because Pantoja does get into wars, he does get into brawls, but I expected Kai Asakura to give Pantoja a run for his money, and he didn't really have much for him besides a flying knee that almost landed on his chin, but like we say, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, so that doesn't really mean much. In this fight, I think Pantoja is clearly the better wrestler, the better grappler. But the one thing I will say is I think Pantoja gets hit a lot. He gets cracked, he gets wobbled, but he continues to pressure forward. He continues to land those kicks to the body, the 1-2s down the middle, the lunging 1-2s, like he dropped Wilson Hayes with. And he'll use those lunging shots to kind of close the distance and get into the body lock, get into the single hook in and dragging the leg back and dragging you into his back control, putting in the body triangle, attacking your neck, flattening you out. It all kind of goes together, and the striking is more of a means to an end in order to get to his grappling. And he is the much better grappler than Kai Kara here. I'm not going to sit here and tell you anything different, but what I will say is I believe Kai Kara France's takedown defense to be some of the best in the flyweight division. I think he's very good at not giving up his back. If you do take his back, he's very good at defending chokes, defending submissions. I could see Pantoja taking his back and kind of riding out a round and maybe going for a rear naked choke and switching off to an armbar on either side. I think that might be something he's looking to do, but I would venture to say that Kai would probably be able to roll out and end up on top and then just stand back up on the feet. The striking in terms of power and technical skill, I would say goes to Kai Kara France, but he has had problems with pressure fighters in the past. You know, there have been guys who have been able to kind of walk him down, get in his face, and push him back, and Pantoja is going to look to wrestle. You know, some people are going to say, oh, well, you know, he struck more in the Kai Asakura fight. He hurt him. He rocked him. He landed a good shot on Asakura, but I think it was more of him being knocked off balance than Asakura actually being knocked down. And I've always been pretty high on Kai Kara France. I've picked against him more recently because, you know, just recent form. I didn't think I just thought there were some bad matchups. Like Steve Erceg, I thought was a bad matchup for him. He comes out, lands that switch stance overhand left, drops him, lands another overhand right against the fence and knocks him out. If he lands on the chin of Pantoja a few times in this fight, he can knock him out. I think the damage in this fight is going to be on the side of Kai Kara. I think the volume is going to be on the side of Kai Kara, but I think the pressure, the wrestling, the takedowns, the submission attempts, I think in every single round 1 through 5, there's a chance that Pantoja gets Kai down and submits him. And that's not like rocket science. It's not like I'm telling you something that most of you guys don't already know. But I think Kai Kara France has more of a chance to win this fight than people are giving him credit for. I rewatched their fight on The Ultimate Fighter, which was about, 9-10 years ago at this point. And honestly, his takedown defense in that fight, his wrestling defense was a lot better than some of you guys probably think that it was. Did he, have too much success on the feet? No. But his defense was good. And I think at this point, his takedown defense and jiu-jitsu defense is probably a lot better. I also think Pantoja has leveled up with every fight that he's been in and every title defense that he has as well. So at the same time that Kai's leveling up, I also believe Pantoja's leveling up. If you're going to take Pantoja, you probably want to take Pantoja submission round 2, 3, 4. Because that's probably how he's going to win. But something's telling me that the damage that Pantoja has taken, in all those Brandon Moreno fights, in the Royval fights, eventually that catches up to you. Eventually that chin that can absorb so many shots eventually goes down, and it happens randomly and it happens fast. And if anybody's going to take advantage of potential durability issues because of all the damage that they've taken, I think it's the guy he's fighting in this fight in Kai Kara France. I just think that the striking that he employs, the right hand, the left hook, the fakes and feints, the uppercuts, this guy has a lot of power for the flyweight division, and if anybody's going to put Pantoja on his ass, it's Kai Kara France. Now, we've seen Kai Kara get submitted. We saw him get submitted by Brandon Royval early in his career, but before he got submitted, he dropped, he rocked, he hurt Brandon Royval, and then just got clipped. But would it shock me if Pantoja wins this fight? No. Would it shock me if Pantoja wins by submission early in this fight? No. But something is telling me that the takedown defense, the wrestling defense, the calmness of Kai Kara France is going to hold up. He's going to start to get his ground. He's going to start to be able to let his shots go more freely. He's going to be able to stop the takedowns a little bit easier. And I think Kai Kara France is going to knock out Alexandre Pantoja. Going into this fight, I was pretty sure I was going to be on the side of Pantoja. But the more tape I watched, I just think Kai Kara can be the guy to put the lights out on Pantoja. Is it the craziest thing to say? It's pretty crazy considering how durable Pantoja has been. But like I said, durability only lasts for so long. And he takes so many shots in all of these fights, that eventually that just has to decline. And I think he's been on a steady decline, even though he's been winning. I think the durability has slowly been declining. And like I said, if anybody's going to take advantage of those durability issues and the potential chin issues, I think it's going to be Kai Kara France. So give me and new. Give me don't blink. Give me Kai Kara France to win. I'm going to go with a third-round TKO over Alexandre Pantoja to become the new UFC flyweight champion. Is it the most popular pick? No, but I definitely think Kara has the chance to win. So don't blink. I'm going with don't blink. Kai Kara France, round 3 TKO. All right, and now we get to the main event of the evening, the fight everybody has been waiting for the vacant lightweight championship of the world. You have a battle between Ilia Topuria taking on Charles Do Bronx Oliveira. Topuria versus Oliveira is a great fight. Obviously, we all wanted it to be Makhachev versus Topuria, but Islam ran like a little bitch, and I don't want to hear it. He ran. He was afraid of Topuria. And that's why he went up to 170, because he could have fought Topuria first and then went up, but he didn't. I don't want to hear it. Just like John Jones with his little stupid hit and run again, doing the same bullshit, and everybody trying to call somebody the GOAT who has a bunch of PED fails and clearly didn't want to fight Aspinall, and that's why he priced himself out, and even when they matched the price, he still didn't take the fight. So, yeah, don't give me that Islam and John Jones bullshit. I'm over both of them. It's okay, though. JDM's going to finish the job for us. But either way, this is a good fight. I definitely think that Oliveira has a chance to win. I don't think it's a big chance, but I think he has a chance. Oliveira thrives off long-range strikes, front kicks to the body, using that little Thai march, the Muay Thai march, to kind of keep that lead leg loose, and then just front kicks to the body, 1-2s. When he throws the 1-2, he will then go into the clinch with knees and elbows over the top. I think the best way for him to win this fight is to kind of push Topuria up against the fence and try to tire him out. So front kicks to the body, calf kicks, circling, 1-2s, use the 1-2s to close off the range, and then try to land knees to the head, elbows, uppercuts. Just make it dirty, make it nasty. I just don't think Topuria is going to allow for that to happen. Topuria is primarily a boxer. He doesn't throw a lot of kicks. He's actually never thrown a body kick or a head kick in his entire UFC run. So take that with that what you will. But he does throw good low kicks. He's got a good calf kick. We saw it used to perfection in the Josh Emmett fight. He's got a very good calf kick, and he's very grounded in his stance. And I think that's a big problem for a guy like Oliveira. People are going to say, well, Oliveira can win on the ground. I think Oliveira can win on the ground. I also think Topuria can win on the ground. And that's the part that I think people are kind of neglecting. I think Topuria can submit Oliveira because I think he's going to drop him at least once. He might only need to drop him once, and he might knock him out because I think Topuria hits that hard. But him being a boxer in his MMA style, he's very grounded. Everything is coming from his legs. And we always talk about power coming from the legs and the hips with the turnover. It doesn't come from your arms. It doesn't come from your fist. It comes from your legs. It comes from the ability to turn those hips over. It comes from how much power you can generate through your legs, up to your chest, through your arms, and then out to the target. And Topuria is one of the best in the world at doing that. Oliveira is also a guy who gets hit, gets rocked, and gets dropped in almost every single one of his fights. And that is a big problem against a guy with the power of Topuria. Now, people are going to point to the Jai Herbert fight. Well, Herbert was a long, tall, rangy striker, and he clipped, Ilia with a head kick and almost knocked him out, and then landed some good shots in the clinch. And I do think that Oliveira has a similar style to Jai Herbert. He's more dangerous than Jai Herbert, a lot more power. And, it wouldn't surprise me if Topuria got clipped with a shot and got finished. It wouldn't surprise me if he got hit, got knocked off balance, and Oliveira jumped on his neck and potentially grabbed the submission. None of those things would surprise me because it is Charles Oliveira, but I just think it's Ilia's time. It's Ilia's time, and him being that boxer and so grounded, even if Oliveira tries to throw kicks, I think he's just going to keep walking him down. He's going to have to walk through some damage. He's going to have to walk through some fire. But he's got good defense. He moves his head well. Even in the open workouts he did before this event, you could see that he was practicing keeping that high guard and then kind of checking the teep kicks and front kicks off of his elbow. His opponent was throwing a bunch of lead leg head kicks. Oliveira likes to do that as well. He'll go lead leg head kick. Boom, follow up with the right hand. A lot of front kicks up the middle. I think he's very well prepared for the style of Charles Oliveira. Sorry, it took me a second there to get those words out. But At the end of the day, I think Topuria is going to hurt Oliveira really bad in this fight. I don't think it'll be round one. Everybody's saying round one KO, round one KO. I think it'll be in the second round. I think he's going to hit him, walk him down, check the kicks, catch and counter. I think he's going to land a big left hook that's going to hurt Oliveira, rock him. He's going to get back up. I think he's going to walk him down again. He's going to move, jab, move. He's going to pull, come back 2-3. I think he's going to hurt him again. He's going to drop him. Oliveira has always had problems with hooks, left hooks and right hooks. I think the left hook of Topuria, which is the same shot that knocked out Max Holloway, I think it's going to hurt Oliveira here. It's going to drop him again. I think Oliveira is going to get followed to the ground just like Makhachev did, and I think Topuria is actually going to win this fight by submission. Would not surprise me at all if it's a KO. I'd actually prefer to see Topuria knock him out, but I have a feeling he's going to hurt him a couple times, and eventually he's going to follow him to the ground in the second round, and he's going to lock up an arm triangle, and he's going to submit him. So give me give me Ilia El Matador Topuria to win. I'm going to go with a second round arm triangle choke submission after he's already hurt him and rocked him a couple times. And it really wouldn't surprise me if Topuria knocked him out with one punch. Like, he could land one left hook. Wouldn't surprise me if he knocked him out. So I think if you're looking to bet this fight, some people are going to say, oh, well, you know, Oliveira's a veteran. Take a shot on the underdog. Don't do that. Not for this one. I would say probably Topuria around 1-2-3 is the best way to play it. It's like minus 180 right now on DraftKings, and it covers the submission because I'm sure people are going to want to play the KO, and there's always that chance that there's a sub. So give me Ilia Topuria, round 2 arm triangle choke submission in this fight to win the lightweight championship, and I think he's going to hold the belt for a long time. All right, but that's it for my UFC 317 preview, predictions, and breakdown. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and smash the notification bell with a left liver shot and a right overhand to knock out all future uploads and make sure you get notified whenever new content drops on the premier mixed martial arts and pro wrestling channel on YouTube. I'm your host, Double M, and enjoy the fights this weekend. I'm out.